failure and the ability to handle failure. What do I mean by that? Let me split it into two parts.
Wear that failure proudly and go forth.
We are the world's only satellite company that's mixing what's called the synthetic aperture radar.
And you mentioning them because Google were PhD students who...
Yeah, so we were in the same cohort in the computer science program with Sergey and Larry and all that.
I think this was around school time. I think I got dumped by my girlfriend back then and I was very angry. And obviously, the next logical thing to do is...
If there's a counseling that's done right when students come in to tell them that, look, you were sold a lie.
Half-truth.
Yeah, half-truth.
So always put the sails out and wait. Wind may come, may not come. How does that matter?
Welcome to the Best Place to Build podcast. Today is the last episode for the year 2025, and as you can see, there is no guest. Our plan for today is to take you through some of the best moments, as per us, of the podcast of the last year. One of the first few episodes we did was with Professor Ravindran. And early on in the episode, I tell him the story about how we gave him a Best Place to Build sticker. And he immediately ripped it off and put it on his laptop, which was, quite cool. And Professor Ravindran recounts it in that episode and says, yeah, of course. What else will I do?
I remember that I had given you the Best Place to Build sticker that day and you immediately put it on your laptop. Yes, that was amazing. Because I strongly believe that this is the best place to build.
Immediately after, I think we met Professor Sathya from the aerospace department. And I have a note here. At the time, we were very early in that podcast and we were also trying to figure out how much do people want to listen to. And, this is the low attention generation. So should we keep it very light? Should we keep it more conversational? Or should we actually go into the technical depth? And I think in Professor Sathya's episode, he goes in. He doesn't sugarcoat it. He just goes in. Whether it's the economics of what he's doing or the technology of what he's doing or the battery of what he's doing or bunch of other things, he just got into it. And I appreciated that he didn't treat me like a podcast host and he didn't treat you like the podcast audience.
And the tech is, crafted for the best business case. That's a paradigm. So if you look at Galaxy, we are the world's only satellite company that's mixing what's called the synthetic aperture radar that can cut through cloud cover or image during nighttime when there is no solar illumination, as well as a multispectral or hyperspectral camera that will image in the visible spectrum that our eyes can see and juxtapose them with deep learning algorithms to figure out if I don't have the illumination or if I'm seeing through cloud cover and there is an obscuration of the visible spectrum camera, how can I actually render the SAR images as if they are visible?
He assumed that we are science curious, which is what I think this podcast is about and our relations is about. I'm science curious, I'm curious about technology, and I assume that you are. And that's why we listen to these things. We listen to these entrepreneurs or these builders talking about their work. That sort of set the tone. Every podcast after that was, let's go into technical depth of it. Let's go into what you're doing. And let's not assume that this is the low attention generation. Sharan's episode. So Sharan's episode kind of was one of the first episodes that got a lot of views for us. While recording it, we didn't think that it will. Some key moments in that episode was very interesting. At one point, he says, you have to be crazy to build silicon. I agree, by the way. But he says it very candidly and he's smiling and he's laughing. And that was a recurring theme later also that, of course, we are building crazy, difficult things and that's why we are doing it. And Sharan said it so beautifully.
See, making silicon is hard.
Okay.
You have to be a special grade of mental to be able to want to make silicon in today's world. Who else makes silicon? Think about it. Let's see. NVIDIA. What's their market cap again?
I don't know, a few $1 trillion.
Largest company in the world.
Yeah.
Done. Who else makes silicon? Apple. Whole different league.
Right.
Who else makes silicon? Intel.
There's a point where he talks about why they got into it. And his PhD advisor is Professor Kamakoti, who is now our director. That story was also quite nice.
So we went to Professor, who he was not yet director at that point, and we were like, sir, when can we get Shakti processor as a chip?
For your
Yeah.
product that you had imagined.
Exactly. And just signing a bunch of papers. And then he was like, it will come when you make it.
At one point, he also talks about his personal failures, exams he has failed, or things like that, and how failure is something that has made him a much stronger person. That was also really nice.
Failure and the ability to handle failure. What do I mean by that? Let me split it into two parts. The ability to recognize failure. There are people who are extremely stubborn. Stubbornness is not a bad thing. Stubbornness will make you keep trying over and over and over and over again. And the difference between success and failure is one more attempt.
Yeah.
Right? So that stubbornness in that perspective, in that context, is a huge asset. But your greatest asset is also your greatest weakness. You never know when to stop. Some things are not meant to be. You just have to accept that they don't work.
I could call them gritty people also.
Yes, grinders.
Yeah.
The gaming terminology is grinding.
Yeah.
And grinding is good.
Yeah, I mean Rahul Dravid is a gritty guy,
Yeah, absolutely.
Stubbornly at his crease.
Absolutely. I remember one test match where he took 92 balls to get off the mark.
Yeah.
To score 1 run. He scored 92, the entire stadium applauded and he raised his bat as if he scored 400 runs.
The weathered a storm.
The ecosystem is set up for you to fail safely. Are you willing to accept that failure?
Right. Okay. Understood.
I was one of those people. I have only had 2 failures in my student life. And that too, it will sound really silly, but in my 8th standard, my maths annual exam paper, I think, I got 59 out of 100. I hadn't got anything under 95 in any course until that point in time.
Right.
I thought I was the world-class failure.
Class 8, it'll feel quite.
Right? When I was doing my master's degree, I had this one course that was a bachelor's course.
Where did you do your master's?
ETH Zurich in Switzerland. And their system is such that you are allowed to fail in a course only once. If you fail a course twice, you are debarred from taking that course. The logic there is it is not for you. There's a whole bunch of other things else, so you would take something else. But for me, unfortunately, it was a bachelor prerequisite course and I had to pass it. Right? If I don't pass that course, my master's program will be cancelled and I'll be sent out of Switzerland. I'll be sent back to India. And my father's health was declining at that point. Guess what happened? First time, fail. Okay. And then I retake the exam. And usually what happens is the professors will give you like 8 to 10 problems to solve. You can choose to solve any problem. And then they'll usually come and say, hey, if you solve 3 problems in its entirety, you will get the grade 6. Perfectly in entirety, you will be able to get a grade 6. And I was like, okay, 6 problems. I can do 2 and I'll be able to pass. Professor comes and like, you need to, this is a very easy paper. And I was like, what? Because it didn't look very easy to me. Computer science student sitting in the department of mathematics writing a theoretical paper. Yeah. And I was a guy who thought, nammalukella maths varadu. No maths. Right? I failed JEE because I failed the math part of it. Not patient with it. I prefer things that I can imagine. And so therefore physics and chemistry is easy. Maths is not. Professor comes and said, easy German, easy paper. You have to get 4 questions to pass. And I was like, fish. I somehow end up attending 4 questions. Then I sit, and then I pray. 9:30 p.m. I get an email saying your grades have been updated. You know what I got?
4. Yes. That was joyful.
Not more, not less. 4. It was 12 years ago. Absolutely irrelevant today. But I failed. Nearly destroyed my career. My father was also one of those over-accomplishers. Never failed. And his health was completely declining to the point of we were wondering whether he will live for another year or 2. That was the situation. And then I was failing, sitting alone in the middle of Zurich, not knowing what to do, not being able to share it with anybody. And then I passed. pass. 4. 1 a.m. in the morning, India time, I call my mother up and say, like, I bloody passed. Nice. Right? 10 years hence, you know what that has given me? You came through that.
Yeah.
You came through that, so you can go through this also.
Late last year, we released an episode with Suyash Singh. He's the CEO of a company called Galaxy. So in that episode, what happened was one of our cameras failed, and Suyash had taken a lot of trouble to come here to IIT Madras. He's Bangalore based, to come here for the podcast, and we noticed it a little late. We have a 3-camera setup, and one of our cameras sort of gave off midway, and the editing room panic in that episode was quite intense. They go, what do? We can't call the guest and tell him that, look, we need to reshoot. At the same time, the conversation was quite good. So we had to really work hard around our constraints. And I think the editors pulled it off. We had an editor called Pracheta at the time, and he's really good. He was involved in the conceptualization of the podcast and the setup that we use. Unfortunately, he has left the team, but shout out to Pracheta. Soon after, we had Anand Rajaram, who was the founder of Jungly, which he sold to Amazon, and then another company which he sold to Walmart. So here's an entrepreneur who has sold a company to Amazon and to Walmart. And then later on, he had gone on to build a bunch of other things, and now he's a VC running this global VC fund called Rocket Ship VC. So we met him, and the most interesting part of that episode was actually a very silly part where he talks about how Jungly was named. And he says, I mean, you should just hear it from him.
So there were some potential investors that we had to pitch the next day. And so the 4 of us, we were sitting together and we were coming up feverishly with the investor pitch at Ashish's house. But we came up with the pitch. We had the PowerPoint slides and all that, but we didn't have a name for the company. He said, "Hey, we have to come up with a name for the company. But we need one where where the .com name is available and it's a bull name and all that stuff." And we were thinking, what do we, one of the interesting things that many of them, we tried many names, but the .com was kind of taken, and it was just even back then a lot of .com names were taken, right? So there was only one company that had been started before us by students. So remember, Google has not been started yet. Google started in 1998, right, after we were acquired. So there was only one.
And you mentioning them because Google were PhD students who.
Yeah, so we were in the same cohort in the computer science program with Sergey and Larry and all that. But they ended up starting in 98. We had started in 96. But at that point, no other students had started companies except for one pair of students who started Yahoo. Okay, so Yahoo was the one company that was ahead of us, right? And then was somebody remembered this song that goes, Yahoo chahe koi mujhe jungli kahe. Nice. So what comes after Yahoo? Jungli. Nice, right? So that is a great story.
Maybe sometime during the beginning of this year, we interviewed a professor called Shweta Agarwal from computer science. What I liked about that episode was that her passion for her work really came through. Cryptography is not an easy subject for her to explain to me or to anyone, and she did a fantastic job, and we did see that the audience appreciated it. Our team was also happy about it. I think almost after that, we had Prajwal, who was the CEO of Cluso, young entrepreneur doing really well. I was a little surprised about that video because it didn't get as much attention as we thought it would get. We thought that maybe people want to watch younger entrepreneurs, which is why we had called him. Anyway, it's okay. As his company does better and better, maybe people will be more interested in what he has to say.
Cluzo is the detective in the Pink Panther movies, if you've ever seen. Oh, yeah. And it also has clue in its name because we give clues about your product essentially. So a lot of little things click. We liked that it was pink and we got to stand out from the general blues and oranges like I see in SAS. Yeah. So yeah, it kind of fit. Akash designed the logo. It's the little mustache, the detective mustache, the monocle.
I can't even tell if is he looking onto the logo, right?
Yeah, he has 2 eyes. One of them is the magnifying glass. Yeah. So now we just made an animation where he winks. I really like that animation. Yeah.
After that, we met Funny, who's the co-founder for Swiggy, who's a co-founder for Swiggy. Swiggy has 3 co-founders. So Funny's interview went great. I mean, it's a good recording. If you haven't watched it, you should watch it. But what was interesting for us was everything that happened around the recording. So because Funny is part of Swiggy and a co-founder, and Swiggy is a listed company, we had to really work with the brand team, because if the guest is from a really large company, then the company's policies, the company may have policies around who can speak what and how is the interview being channeled and so on. So we had to reach out to the Swiggy brand team, and the Swiggy brand team was very cooperative, surprisingly cooperative. And yeah, we got it done. It took a while to schedule because Funny had to come here, and somebody from his brand team also had to come here. So we had some guests from Swiggy on that day on set, but good interview. I'm happy. At some point, we interviewed Professor Mohan Shankar from HTIC Brain Center. He's an electrical engineering prof. He's done a lot of work in the last 10, 15 years, shockingly high amount of work. At one point in his podcast, he talks about his early career, and he talks about how he sort of was informed about the socio-economic context of cataract surgery in India. Now, I know it sounds simple, but what was interesting about that, and the point he was making, is that as technocrats, we sometimes think of the technology part and sort of miss the bigger picture. And so he was talking about how the bigger picture should influence the technology more than the technology influencing the bigger picture, which never happens. It's the context of where we live in, which requires a particular technology to solve a particular problem.
And I still remember this conversation in about 2009, 10, late 2009, early 2010. I had, worked in US, where I was very fortunate to develop some really cool cutting edge ophthalmic devices to restore vision in blind patients by electrically stimulating the retina, so the back of the eye. Yeah. So, here I am, this young, sort of idealistic, sort of naive professor. I'm in Dr. Badrinath's office, and he's like, "Oh, professor, you've done all this, complex medical devices. Congratulations. But do you know what are the leading causes of blindness in India?" And obviously, I know where this is going, right? He's going to just literally dunk me. And I said diabetic retinopathy because, I said, no, it is refraction and cataract, right? People are still blind with cataract. This cataract is essentially, it's a normal aging process that happens, and the lens becomes opaque. And actually, I was quite shocked that I was actually feeling a little bit ashamed that I didn't know this, that cataract is a leading cause of blindness in India. Yeah. And then he explained it to me as to why it is, right? The cataract surgery costs in India is some of the lowest, and many of our eye institutions do it at free of cost for people who cannot afford it. So the cost problem has gone away. So now it's very interesting, right? If I take the cost out, so you should be wondering like, oh, where is the problem? The problem is one of access.
Then we interviewed Preeti ma'am, who was the director in charge at IIT Zanzibar, and she took us through what it takes to start up an IIT. And I found it fascinating. Like, we're talking about startups, we're talking about enterprise building. These guys are building an educational institute. So how does that come about, and what laws and policy and, what are the infrastructure elements that had to be built? And it was fun talking to Professor Preeti. Professor Preeti is also very warm and very candid, opens up and says her mind, very loved by her students.
The first question that comes to mind is, what does it take to start a new IIT? Can you break it down into steps for us?
So I think we can write a book about this. So you wanted me to break it down into steps. I think the first is for the two governments, wherever we are going, to have a very good, strong, possibly a strategic kind of bilateral relationship. That is very important. Nothing would happen without that. And the second would be that, and of course, IIT Madras always raises its hand first for all these things, want to do this, want to pick up on this challenge and go over there. And you have to set up everything from scratch, right? Every chair, every blackboard, every single student, faculty that is their staff member, etc.
We had the episode with Srinath from Agnikul. His company makes rockets that go to space. What I liked about that episode is that you meet Srinath and you think about, we have this image of engineering company heads and CEOs being very technical, but he's such a good storyteller. So I think that really came across a bunch of stories he told around his own journey and why Agnikul exists and what is the problem they are trying to solve. So it is all really cool. Very, very good storyteller, CEO of an engineering firm.
So when all my bosses in Wall Street were very rich, right, and they used to go sailing, right, and they used to tell me this general thing, not about life and all, but about sailing. Like, you always put up the sails, wait for the wind. That wind is that luck element, right? It will come, it will blow. You can't control the wind; it will blow. But if your sails are not up, you lost the opportunity, right? So all you can do is put up the sails. I literally heard this exact story from, and he's still a very close mentor of mine. And whenever I go to New York, I still visit him. Like, he literally did that, like, because he used to sail, and I didn't make enough money to go sailing. But he used to tell me this as something there left is like, it's a very humbling thing, right? You're just waiting for nature to help you. But if your sails are not up, it's over. So always put the sails out and wait. Wind may come, may not come. How does that matter?
But as you're saying this, I'm getting goosebumps because this is literally what happened with Agnikul, right? Like, you already had your company running, and then the space sector in India opened up, and it's such a big win, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Hands down, my favorite episode was the one we shot with Sriram. Sriram is a coach, and he takes us to various things about the pressures that students are under, the pressure to perform, peer pressure, family pressure, and a bunch of things around how students, what affects student life. He also, with some collaborators, set up a course in IIT Madras called Happiness, Habits, and Success. And so in that episode, he describes how that came about, why that course exists, who were his collaborators, who were the professors involved, and what is the impact that that course had. It's good to hear it from him. On campus, everybody knows about the course, but the alumni and the and general public should know more about it. I think they should be able to replicate that kind of a course in more IITs and more institutes, and it will really benefit students who are in the grind and the moment, and they have all these pressures tugging them on all directions.
This twofold reason, I would say, of pressure on campus and loneliness in campus, this set up the foundation for why we started the course, Happiness, Habits, and Success, to help give students a foundational understanding of what happiness means and what success means. And to find the habits and cultivate the habits that can make you both happy and productive at the same time. Again, research shows that the more positive minded you are, the more of a positive outlook you have, the more likely you are to perform and outperform your peers. Salesmen who had a positive outlook outperform peers by a significant percentage. Doctors who are optimistic treat patients significantly better than pessimistic doctors. So that's the core idea, to tell students that there is a way to succeed beyond expectation, and that can also be a joyful journey. And that
Sure.
can be done in the company of peers and family and a support network.
Professor Mahesh, of course, went on to start his own podcast, with such a good podcast, Professor Mahesh podcast. He interviews a different kind of guest and people who are at the top of their profession, and they have a long conversation about what that career looks like. But we met him before he had started his podcast. And in that podcast with Professor Mahesh, I think one of the nicest things he spoke about was about how failure, how we view failure has changed over the years. And now it's almost like a badge of honor. Of course, I've failed. I've tried something hard. I failed. It's okay.
There's the entrepreneurship, especially a deep tech entrepreneurship side, engineering entrepreneurship avenue opening up for students.
That has been a dimension of the last 10 years or maybe 7-8 years that has completely changed the landscape for what students can do. It's far more, I'll say, even fashionable to take a break from a career driven thinking for 2 3 years and try a risky idea. Should that succeed, you have your own launchpad into a world that you couldn't have gotten into without that launchpad. If it didn't succeed, it is now extremely fashionable on one CV to say I tried this startup but failed. That actually gives the person a leg up. Yeah. So I think our biggest victory, of India's biggest victory of the last 7 or 8 years, has been this treating of failure as a credential, as a medal on your chest. Yeah. Wear that failure proudly and go forth and interview for a job.
Professor Kamakoti's episode, I was quite stressed about that episode. He's, of course, the director and he funds this project. So I didn't want to disappoint him. He's also very busy. So we had to coordinate with his office and he came in and he immediately started recording. I liked about when he was talking about Suprabhatam class.
That was very early days where we really wanted to experiment that how early can we. So always I believe that morning 4 to 8 is the most productive time. Your brain is fresh, provided you have slept well. So he just have this body polish Suprabhatam slot.
Suprabhatam slot. Okay.
And we start at 7 o'clock and go up to 8 or 6:30 to 8. And actually student enjoyed. I did get good attendance coming.
Nice.
We did twice a week. So sometimes compare in large part of the first decade, like 2010, 2011, and a little bit 20.
Okay.
We were experimenting.
Towards the end of the episode, he also talks about IIT Madras's NIRF ranking and how come IIT Madras keeps hitting that NIRF number 1. He does an excellent job of explaining that.
As a director, I want to ask you, of course, we are talking about students working hard and getting a rank. IIT has also worked very hard and got the NIRF rank 1 for many years in a row. What gives, Professor? How come we end up consistently being on top?
We are aligning ourselves with the national priorities.
Okay.
That's very, very important. And we are touchwood, we are working as a very cohesive unit. Like within the faculty, staff. You'll have, see, any place will have some difference of opinions and other things will be there. But what we do is, any such thing, we try to resolve it at the earliest and finally come to some consensus and everybody agrees to that consensus and put their full heart in it. And that is a semblance of a great institution.
Pratyush runs a company called Sarvam and the episode went great and you should watch it if you haven't watched it. It talks about sovereign AI and how AI is moving and what are the cost structures and what are the problems that we should be solving and so on. But what I remember about Pratyush's episode is how hard it was for us to get him on the podcast because he's so busy. At one point, I had a friend I had told him, listen, Pratyush works in this building, just let me know if he comes. And then he texted me saying, oh, Pratyush just walked down the stairs. And then I was in the next building. So I'm running beyond the stairs, going up and down the stairs, saying, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? I did not get him that day. But we did get him another day. Daniel's episode. So Daniel runs this company called Detect. And people on campus sort of know about Detect and broadly have a overview of what he does. But because Daniel is a little media shy, he hadn't really spoken about in many forums. So that episode for me, it was like really discovering what Detect does in Daniel's words. A lot of new things I learned. I learned about the how industrial safety has moved from 100 years back to now and how his company is playing a part in it. Many guests we have not been to podcasts or given interviews earlier. They're technocrats, so they do their work and their work speaks for themselves. So we sort of help them a little bit by giving them questions beforehand, saying this is what we're going to talk about. Please come prepared. Sometimes we give them instructions on what to wear and stuff like that. But it's interesting. That Daniel episode was it came out very well because of course he's very well spoken and he was able to explain what his company does really well. Neel Gala's episode. Oh my God. This was the first episode that crossed 100K views, and we were so excited. It was totally unexpected. Did not see it coming. I think some things that worked in Neel Gala's episode was how candid he was, how honest he is, and so on. There was one moment where he was talking about a paper shredder moment in his life. And I mean, this is such a good story. You have to hear it from him.
This is while I was working with Professor Kama as a project staff. And
That would be what?
this was around 2010 time frame. I'd graduated in 2010. 2011 is when I was, like any other peer of mine, I was behind the American dream, let's go do masters there. I started applying. I had this list of 6, 7 universities, ambitious, moderate, backup universities. At that time, we had to, write recommendation letters by hand. And the prof had to sign it and we had to courier it.
Yeah, and Professor Kamakoti's recommendation letter carries a lot.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it was, and I was, I would do anything to get that letter. So I one fine day, I had 2 more universities, which were my backup universities. And I was waiting for him in his office. He comes out of his office at close to 8 p.m., right? And he tells me, Neel, what's up? And I tell him, I have these 2 universities. You've sent 6. Why don't you send these 2? These are my backup. Why are you going there? I mean, these are backup. These are even worse than doing a master's in IIT Madras. Why do you want to go there? Why do you want to abandon your parents? I was like, no, I will come back for sure. I was like, nah, if you want to come back, then why go at all? Maybe what can I not give you that these universities are giving you? That made me realize this is a prof I spent 18 months with. He sees the potential in me. He believes that I can do much better here. And yet I'm on this wagon to go try my luck out in a foreign land with foreign people with zero idea of where my future is. And at that very instant, he always keeps a shredder because he does a lot of confidential stuff there. He signed the docs and he said, if you truly believe in what you're saying, you shouldn't be applying to these universities. And right then and there, that's where I shred those documents. I stopped applying. Fortunately, his recommendations gave me access or gave me admissions to an Ivy League school as well. But Professor Kama is a force of nature, right? It's impossible you walk out of his room with less patriotism.
Yeah, it's very inspiring.
You're just filled with heart of patriotism, and it would be very tough to, wean that off. And that day forward, I think we were aligned on, the belief that India has to create and not just consume.
We met Victor Senapati is the CEO of Propelled, co-founder CEO of Propelled. And I think, a nice episode. He explains his segment and what he does. There was one time where he was talking about how JEE coaching and is quite stressful, but you end up thinking that JEE is the last milestone. And but it's not. It's you either get into IIT or you get into NIT or some engineering college. And that's really the beginning of your life. Because after that, you have to become that engineer that you prepared to become. And so he talks about how people end up thinking that that's the end, but that's actually the beginning.
Like the mental relaxation that I was looking for, at least in my case. It was not like I was mentally overwhelmed after preparing so much for IIT. It's more about, an idea that I am right now, at the pinnacle and there is nothing, what else is there to go? I think if that would have been shown a lot more that, look, you're at a great stepping point now. And from here, there are great, awesome places that you can get to, awesome things that you can build. I think things would have been a little more different.
But you eventually started building. So what was the change in you from the first year Victor to the AstroWorks Victor? What changed that you decided to build?
There was just a self-realization that hit me when I sat for placements in college. That's when I realized that, whoa, people have actually done things. They've actually, improved a lot. They've, explored many avenues, and I could have also done the same. So that's when I decided that, okay, so wherever I go next, whatever else I do in life, I'll sort of understand that, I'm only at a stepping point and there are a lot more, great places to get to.
Very interesting. I think in JE coaching days, this idea gets sold to you that the end goal is admission.
Yes.
But you are saying that the end goal is not admission at all. Like there's always something more and a further distance to go.
Yeah, of course. I can understand why that end goal is sold at that point of time. At that point of time, people want you to put your 100% in that. But then even after that, I feel like if there's a counseling that's done right when students come in to tell them that, look, you were sold a lie.
Half truth.
Yeah, half truth. In nicer words. You're not at an end goal now. You're at a beginning point and it's a great beginning point. You have awesome, peers and great alumni who built great stuff. You have the best facilities in the country and probably in the world. You have all sorts of avenues, just go for it.
Sometime after Victor, we met Professor Ganti, who runs the 5G lab. And while talking to him, we asked him, Professor, can we just shoot in your lab? And he said, yes, why not? And then we decided to shoot an episode of Best Place to Build Labcast with Piyush as the host in his lab. So that was the first time we had done that. And it was interesting because in the episode here with Professor Ganti, we had spoken about a few things, especially the first 5G phone call. And then that same moment comes back in the Labcast episode where he talks about the first 5G phone call. So same episode, same event spoken in different viewpoints. That was interesting to watch.
Exciting things that happened was almost close to the end of the project. Honorable Minister of Communication at the time was Ashwini Vaishnavji. He came here and made the first phone call, 5G phone call in India in our lab. It was a very exciting and a tense time for all of us. I mean, I remember that time. So we were doing this in the research park in a small room. We had this base station put up and cell phone put up. We were expecting that only Ashwini Vaishnavji will come into the room and make a call, but suddenly there's huge rush of reporters and everyone into the room. They started blocking the base station, and my student was sitting at the base station. So he said he was vigorously pointing me. Say, sir, the signal is not going through because people are blocking it. People are blocking it. So he made the decision that I will increase the transmit power at that time, and minister was able to make the call. And after that, whole system went down for some time. It was a nerve-wracking movement, but nevertheless, it was a very exciting moment that the first 5G phone call was being made with the homegrown technology.
It was only in April 2022 that we made the first official 5G call. So we were all working in the lab like every day. And there are like multiple steps that we have to cross to ensure that the phone latches to the base station. The previous day, it was a Friday. We we took a lot of logs, and then we understood that these are some power parameters that has to be changed. And we were fixing them, and it was late, so we went. And in the early morning, we came and then we put all those parameters and we checked. And for the first time, we saw a phone got connected to our 5G base station. So that was like a eureka moment. And we were like overjoyed. And our professor was already on the way to our lab. So he came over there and then we explained him that we were able to achieve this. Immediately, he was overjoyed and he called Professor Bhaskar Ramurthy. He rushed over to the lab to witness that first 5G call through our own base station. Then he called Professor Kamakoti. Then it went on media, it went on news.
Okay. So this is your first call on the indigenous 5G system from a commercial 5G phone.
Completely indigenous tech. Congratulations to the entire team.
We wanted to shoot Exponent Energy's founder Arun Vinayak. He was also an early key player in Aether. He was heading their product for a while, and very fascinating guy. And we asked him, can we shoot in your factory? And he said yes. So that was an interesting shoot where we shot in Arun's factory. But what was the most interesting part of that episode is where he talks about a younger Arun in high school where I think he was dating some woman and they broke up, and Arun's reaction or Arun's processing method was to go build a car.
Generally loved building stuff when I was young, and my parents were kind enough to let me two things.
Sorry, you have to give us much more detail than this. What is this story? Why were you building a car? And how did you go about it?
Yeah, I think this was around school time. I think I got dumped by my girlfriend back then, and I was very angry. And obviously, the next logical thing to do is build a car.
Sorry, that is right. Sure.
So this place called Shivaji Nagar in Bangalore is really cool. So it used to have a lot. It's basically a scrap market, but there's also like this hidden piece of diamond if you go if you know what you're looking for. So it's called Gujri in then. So where we used to go pick up all these second-hand engine parts, bearing parts, wheel parts. So and I had my best friend from school has had a factory. His dad had a factory. So we had access to all this cutting, grinding, welding machines. So we use this grease monkeying.
Professor Karthik Raman, I think that episode, he's such a good speaker and he explains everything so well. And I in the prep to that episode and in the conversation in that episode, we talk about something called the spherical cow. And I found that hilarious. And you just have to hear from him what a spherical cow is.
Old physicist joke, right? So they say, hey, let's assume a spherical cow in a vacuum, ignoring the effects of gravity.
Yeah.
Right. So
And so that's the opposite end of digital twin, where
that's the opposite end, right? But I think that's a reasonable place to start, even, right? So as a modeler, you want to start with spherical cows, even. I mean, even though we mock them and so on, because it's like you start fixing certain ideas.
Dinesh from Fabheads also hasn't given an interview before. We had to really work with him saying, these are the questions, let's come prepared. This is what we talk about. And he did a fantastic job. Of course, a very genuine person. And he describes in his episode how he and his friend were building from like literally his parents' place for a really long time. And it took them a while to get to where they are now and how far they have come. Dr. Richa's podcast episode, she's of course a fabulous scientist and she spoke very well. And the more fun shoot with Dr. Richa was that we asked Dr. Richa, we have this experimental other kind of shoot that we are doing, which is called the Sukachachi podcast. Would you like to collaborate with us on that? And she said yes. And maybe we'll pull up some shots from that other show. It's just so funny. And she did such a fabulous job and she was amazing.
When we get the extracted brain from our clinical partner.
So what do you do with the brainless bodies?
These brains are donated by the deceased person's next of kin.
But do you freeze them also? Like, aren't you worried about being responsible for the zombie apocalypse?
Yeah.
Professor Prabha is a professor of quantum physics. So I think early on in the episode, I told Professor Prabha, look, I don't understand anything about quantum. So if you can explain it to me, I know that I come across a little bit of an idiot in that episode, but she came across as someone who's really willing to explain things and she did such a great job.
A very simple example that or a simple picture that I can give you is a kind of geometric picture to contrast how a quantum bit will be different from a classical bit, right? So in classical computers, you know that we encode in zeros and ones. So now instead of this humble 0, 1, you imagine now a sphere, a ball, and then you put the 0 and 1 at the two poles of the sphere. So 0 could be at the north pole, 1 could be at the south pole, right? But now instead of just having these 2 points in which you can transcribe information, you now have all the points on the surface of the sphere.
Okay.
So that's what quantum does, right? If you, instead of encoding into these zeros and ones, if you encode into a quantum state, then that means that you somehow have access to the entire surface of the sphere and not just 2 points on the surface of the sphere.
Towards the end of that episode, she also talks about the ratio of women in engineering and how, and this is sort of like a topic that we have picked up in different episodes about how women find it in engineering as opposed to men. What is their experience like and how it's changing over time, which fields are easier, which fields are harder, and what are some of the older notions that people have that are breaking now. Even today, we get questions from parents saying, is this suitable for, I don't know why. I don't know why. What do they think that engineers do? But they still ask us questions like, oh, is naval suitable? Is chemical suitable? I don't know. But I would ask you that question. Is this a field that sees a lot of women in it?
At the moment, not yet, right? Our ratios unfortunately haven't changed much from the 10% that you saw, right? In engineering physics, I think in a batch of about 40, 45, maybe we have 10 girls typically.
Okay, so that's
a
20.
little bit better,
Yeah.
right? It's 20% almost, I think, which is good. And I think also initiatives like the supernumerary, sort of
Supernumerary.
yeah, I think that helps, right? Certainly. So I think, to me, the biggest problem for women in STEM fields is that at some point, I mean, I would say by and large, Indian parents, we are very supportive of women's education, I must say, in general, right, as a society. Because I don't believe that, I don't buy this thing that we are very conservative. We are not at all conservative when it comes to educating our women, right?
I mean, there's data on this because in CBSE, women outperform men all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my son is in class 4 and I can tell you that the number of girls in his class is, first of all, outnumbers the number of boys, and the number of top rankers who are girls is much higher, right? So this is very true. But I think what happens is, after a certain age, society starts imposing certain, not constraints, but more like expectations, that now you need to do this, this and this, right? And then this and this come with all these constraints. But then you start second guessing yourself. You start saying, should I really go for that master's, which is going to take me 2 more years? And then what do I do? And then should I really go for this PhD, which is like 5 years long,
Interesting.
you know? Or should I, at this point, I'm getting placed, let me take this job. I mean, nothing wrong in that, but I'm just saying that the choices that girls start making at 2021 is, I think, what pushes down the number of women who are, sort of, see, you need that extra qualification, you need that extra skilling, right, in order to be able to enter a niche area like this.
Yeah. Also, there are some fields, I feel, there are some fields, if a woman in 11, 12 or 8, 9, 11, 12 has decided that I want to have a long career, there are some fields which are predominantly women. Like I come from marketing, there's a lot of women in it.
Right.
So by default, they choose fields where there are more women. So I think
that is just pure peer driven.
Okay, fair.
Right? It's like, for example, okay, so I went to do a PhD.
It's not a really logic driven.
I don't think it's very logical. Because if you really think about how time demanding it is and so on, it's not any less demanding, right? Because I see, women, I have friends, women who are in marketing, they're all the time having to, you could have client calls in the middle of the night, you could have client calls early in the morning.
Yeah.
Whereas if you think about it, I actually do not have calls in the middle of the night. I set my calendar myself, frankly, if you think about it. So in a way, I find I have more freedom sometimes.
Yeah, and this is a field where your gender really doesn't give you an edge for anything. You could be a man or a woman.
Absolutely, absolutely. I do think that the main issue that happens is, after a certain age, you maybe have additional constraints, additional responsibilities. But today, in today's day and age, we have developed mechanisms to work with it. So I see no barrier as such.
Sometime during the year, we wanted to do a student edition where we wanted to interview students, and I felt like maybe we could do with a student host because that will be in sync with the concept of that show. So we started the Best Place to Build Student Edition. We asked one of our older collaborators, Vidhi, whether she'd like to do it. Vidhi is a student here at IIT Madras. She's in her final year. And she said yes. And I think she's done a fabulous job. I'm really enjoying the work she's doing. I hope you have seen some of the episodes. If not, we'll play some clips.
The first question that pops in my head, and I think in a lot of people's heads, is like, what's the top speed? What's the fastest that the car can go?
It's designed to reach a top speed of 154 kilometers per hour.
Wow.
But on track, we've only hit around 90 to 100. The track has a maximum straight line of only 75 meters. So it's more about the acceleration. So our 0 to 100 acceleration time is under 4 seconds on this car.
In simple terms, what is a Hyperloop exactly?
You have railways, you have a flight. So basically, we are trying to combine both of them. The speed of airplanes with the cost and running efficiency of a train.
What is this World Solar Challenge, and how does it help you guys in any way to be building these cars?
This is a cross-continental competition, which means you have to travel from north part of Australia to southern part of Australia, which is around 3,022 kilometers in just a span of 5 days, only using solar energy, and you can use a battery as a backup.
Professor Anupama Rajan, she's a professor of the Department of Medical Science and Technology. So our first professor from that department, and there's a lot to learn from me. She works on something called, she runs a lab called OrgaMed. So fun, ambitious young prof, the life of a prof is something that we have been covering over many podcasts. Sometimes we've asked, for example, we've asked Professor Mahesh, what are the pressures on a prof? How do profs think of their careers? What are the motivations that they have? And same question for a young professor like Anubhava Rajanji. Her view on life is quite different.
I knew if I want to go back to Indian academia, I have to bring something new to the table that did not exist in India. And when I researched about it, I realized airway organoids or lung organoids would be a pressing field for Indian context because we have major burden of tuberculosis, multiple respiratory diseases, and nobody was working at that time. So I switched to a similar field, but a different question, which involved using lung organoids. So my postdoc is from the group of Dr. Piedra Lab or Tony Piedra. He worked in respiratory viruses and he also tests vaccines for CDC at Baylor. So I started my postdoc investigating how airway organoids can be used to look at viral infections.
During that period, we also crossed 50K subscribers, which was a great deal for my team. We did not expect, when we started, we did not know how much we'll get, where we'll get to. And 50K subscribers was a big shot in the arm. I still owe ice cream to my entire team because I promised them I'll get 50K subscribers. Once we cross 50K, we'll get them ice cream. If we didn't, I have to do that now. Probably do it in early Jan. I hope you have a great 2026. That's all from us for this year. And next year, we'll come back with more guests. And yeah, that's it. Like, share, subscribe, comment, reach out to me, follow our guests. Do all of that. Thank you.